me into how I found this path and how I got here. So I remember the first time that I ever learned that I was poor as a child. I was in second grade, and there was a boy named Ricardo Adams. And that day, I hadn't been able to find a pair of matching socks. So I had two different colored socks on. I had a red sock and a white sock on. And this boy was making fun of me, and he said to me, you don't even have matching socks. You're poor. And up until that point, I didn't know what my economic standing was at 7 years old. So I remember being hunched up in the hallway of my elementary school, just crying with my knees up against my chest and my arms over my knees with my head buried in my arms, just crying because I didn't know that. I didn't know that I was poor. So in 7th grade, I broke my arm ice skating. And I thought it was really cool that we had an ice skating rink in our backyard. I thought, no other kids have ice skating rinks in their backyard. This is fantastic. This is something special. And I had been twirling around, and I fell, and I landed on my arm, actually my left arm, and I broke it. And I had told some of my friends that we could go ice skating in our backyard, and this is really cool, until they found out that it was because we had a septic tank that would leak, and in the winter it would freeze into the sheet of ice, and so I would ice skate on our frozen septic waste. In high school, most of my clothes were hand-me-downs from my best friend, who was taller than I was, so they were all really baggy on me. But in the early 90s, baggy was really cool, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I also would sneak into high school through the doors where the students, because even as a senior in high school, we didn't have a car that I could drive to school, and so I had to ride the bus, and it was really embarrassing to me, so I would sneak into the side because I didn't want people to see me coming in the front doors. I really didn't like to have anybody over to my house because the house that I grew up in was literally just decaying all around us. We had water in the walls and in the ceiling. There was mildew. The walls were all warped, and it even got so bad that at one point we had a plank. It's actually probably about this size, and it went from the hall to our toilet in our one bathroom that sat on a 30-degree angle, and we would have to walk across the plank because the floor had rotted out in our bathroom so bad that there wasn't a floor to walk on. So we had to walk on a board to get to the bathroom. So I learned early on that this is not something, I didn't want my life to be like this, right? My parents are awesome people, and they did their best. They tried, but this is just the situation that I grew up in. My dad worked a full-time job. He had 2 jobs on the side, so he was never home. When he was home, he was really exhausted, so we didn't get a lot of time to interact with him. And my mom worked full-time, so my brother and I were home alone a lot. And also, I have 2 little sisters. They're teenagers now, but when I was a teenager, I got to spend my summers babysitting my little sisters instead of being able to do anything because my parents worked all the time. So I was always stuck at home with my little baby sisters, and I couldn't leave. I couldn't go anywhere. I also didn't have a car, so I couldn't get anywhere either. So I learned really early on that being poor limits your choices. It limits your experiences in life. It doesn't give you any freedom. You also don't have a lot of control. A lot of things are out of your control when you're in a poor economic place. So when I moved to Utah, I was 19 years old, and my aunt sat me down, and she had a conversation with me, and she said, Amy, because my family all calls me Amy, she said, Amy, what do you want out of life? And I was 19. I didn't know what I wanted out of life. Maybe like some of you guys here, you're just not sure yet. You don't know. And all I said to her is I said, I just don't want to be poor. That's all I want. That's my goal in life. Because I realized at the age of 19, too, that was just something that was really going to limit my ability to have experiences and to grow and have freedom. So when I moved to Utah when I was 19, the first person I met, her name was Amber, and she was just this happy, bubbly person. She comes walking down the road and introduces herself to me, and I didn't have any friends yet. And we got to know each other. She was my first friend that I made when I moved here to Utah. And she told me about what she did for a living, because I never saw her work. I was like, you're always around. You can always hang out. You're not ever doing anything. I said, what do you do? Because she had her own apartment. She paid her own bills. And she said, I'm a massage therapist. I said, oh, what does that mean? I don't know what that is. Tell me what that is. So she takes me to the Utah College of Massage Therapy, And she's like, well, let's get you a massage, because you can go there and you can get massages by the students for like $30. And so we went. And I remember the massage therapist came in and they're like, okay, well, we're going to need you to take off all your clothes. And I was like, what? All my clothes? Like, what do you mean? You mean just my outside clothes, right? Like, you don't need me to take off my underwear. And they're like, no, like all your clothes. And I was like, no, there's no reason you should have to touch my butt. There's no muscles there, right? That's just skin. I didn't know anatomy at the time. So I was just like, no, there's no muscles you need to work out. So needless to say, that was my only experience where I got a massage and I was not totally naked, because once I felt what it felt like to have them, like, working out your muscles, I was like, oh, well, yeah, definitely not wearing clothes ever again. So that was kind of a funny experience, but I really liked it. I was really intrigued by it. I felt that it really made me feel a lot better. I suffered from chronic headaches my entire life. I'd been to the doctor, I'd been to the chiropractor, and at one point a medical doctor told my dad and I that I just needed to stop putting my hair in a ponytail and that my headaches would go away. I didn't really like that as a solution. I questioned his medical authority after that. But so when I started getting massages, I noticed that my headaches went away, so I didn't have pain anymore. And so to me, that really spoke to me, because it made my life so much more enjoyable because I was pain-free. And I thought, I really want to do this for other people. How amazing would it be to be able to come in and help people that are in pain so they can live a quality life. So I started on my path to massage, and I had my own private practice until about 6 years ago, when I noticed that my hands really started aching. I had a lot of joint pain. I realized that I couldn't do more than 6 hours of massage in a day, and doing 6 hours of massage every day for the rest of my life just wasn't realistic. So I started thinking, well, what else can I do? How can I use this experience? How can I find a way to apply massage, something that I love, that I'm passionate about, that's helped me in my life, and how can I make more money doing it? I don't know how, because you're also limited in what you can do financially. You can only work so many hours in a day, so you can raise your prices, but there's that ceiling. You just can't really make more income than that. So I came up with the idea to bring corporate massage into the offices of companies and massage their employees at work. So the companies pay for it. It's part of their benefits or their wellness package, or it's just like a nice thing that they're doing for their employees. And then we get to go in and we get to massage all their employees. And it's awesome because their employees it's just really rewarding. They're super happy, they're super grateful because they're getting a free massage at work. So all of our employees just love their jobs because they also get to go to new places all the time, meet new people. So it's kind of a different area of massage, because your typical massage job is in the dark, in a spa, massaging people the same place every day. And so it's kind of a fun idea. So I had this idea, and I wanted to see where it would go. And so my talk today is about how that idea and the philosophy of entrepreneurism in my own life has given me freedom. It's given me choices in my life. It's created wealth. It's given me the opportunity to create a legacy for my family, for my children. I have 3 daughters. And it's given me the power to be the architect of my own life, to be in control of what happens and to be proactive in my life instead of being a victim of the circumstances that are around me. So you can tell this is something I'm very passionate about. So does anybody here know the most effective way to grow wealth? Just anybody have an idea? Well, Dave Ramsey has a show. Has anybody heard of Dave Ramsey? Show of hands. Okay, good. Almost everybody. So Dave Ramsey is a guy who comes in and he teaches people how to get out of debt, and then once you're out of debt, he teaches you how to invest. So he has a talk show, and one of his talk shows he does every once in a while is called The Millionaire Hour, and he typically has people call in with like debt questions or investing questions, but during the Millionaire Hour, he has millionaires call in, and he asks them the same questions over and over again, and their answers are all pretty much the same. So one of the questions he asked them is, what advice do you have for somebody who wants to be a millionaire? And what they say almost every time is that the key to building wealth is to work for yourself. So 80%, there's a book called The Millionaire Next Door. Has anybody heard of that? Anybody? Jenny has. Extra credit. So in The Millionaire Next Door, They do a whole bunch of research on the millionaires in America, and they realize there's a bunch of patterns. Just like Dave Ramsey's show, he realizes there's a bunch of patterns. People, they don't actually buy expensive jeans. They're frugal people. They're people that live in modest homes. They live below their means. They're not the rock stars that society thinks millionaires are, which is the point of the book. Anyway, the millionaires in America, 80% of them are first generation. So what does that mean to you? What do you think that means if they're first generation? Yeah. Yep. Exactly. They're completely self-made. 80% of the millionaires in America are self-made millionaires. And what's more is that 2/3 of the millionaires are self-employed. The other 1/3 is made up of people that have inherited and people that are in professional occupations like doctors and lawyers. But 2/3 of the millionaires in America are self-employed. So let me give you just a small example from my own life. I worked in a spa and a chiropractor's office as a massage therapist when I was first starting out. And when I was 21, I decided I was going to do something brave, and I was going to just take clients at my own house. And we just had a little basement apartment. It was like $500 a month. It had a really low ceiling, so when you came down the stairs, you would hit your head on the ceiling if you didn't duck. So we had 2 bedrooms, and in one of the bedrooms, I said, I'm going to put up a little massage table, and I'm going to go out and try to find people who will come to my house and get massages. I only charged $50 an hour, and people would come in, and I went to a local gym, and I would do free chair massages on people after they worked out, and that's how I got my clientele. So they would come in and get their massages, and my husband actually lost his job right after that, and he was unemployed for about 2 months. And I was able to completely support us for those 2 months on just the 3 hours that I worked a day. And so that is kind of an example of how working for yourself, even though it's not the company I'm in right now, even at a young age, working for myself was able to give us that freedom that my husband could take time to find the job that he wanted instead of being forced to do something just because we needed the money. So my first recommendation is that if you are interested in building wealth for yourself, that you should work for yourself. So what kind of freedoms do you guys think entrepreneurism provides? When you think of an entrepreneur, somebody who works for themselves, someone who's self-employed, what kind of freedoms do they enjoy? Set their own hours, yes. Is that what you were going to say?
Yes, kind of. You sometimes end up working a lot of hours.
You do. So there's a lot of discipline that goes into creating some boundaries. And it is hard work. That is very, very valid. I didn't make any money in Incorporate Massage for the first 2 years. I didn't start even taking a salary on anything at all until the 3rd year, and it was like $200 a month is what I paid myself. And I put in a lot of hours. But now it's a different story. Now we're on our 6th year, and it's a totally different story. But the freedom of time is definitely one of the big draws for a lot of people, and being able to control that time. So I have a friend named Jessica, and she used to have her own small business. And she had a baby, so she stopped her business, but now her baby's a little bit older, so she's been looking for something to do because she's got free time on her hands. And she's been asking me, hey, when do you need some help at Incorporate Massage? Like, let me help. I really, want to make a little extra money. And I have got some time on my hands. So we recently just signed a really big account. So we had this really tight deadline, and we had to get all these accounts set up in our system. So we have to input everybody in an account manually by hand. So we had all this data entry to do. And we had a tight deadline. All of our employees were already maxed out. They were staying up till 1 and 2 in the morning to get this done. And so I reached out to my friend Jessica, and I said, Jess, I need your help. Are you still interested in helping us? We've got some data entry. And she's like, okay, yeah, I'm really excited. So she's doing it. She's typing all night long. She ended up staying up till about 2 in the morning. And I had dinner with her on Saturday, and she said to me, I got to tell you, that really sucked. She's like, I really, really miss working for myself. My family, they wanted to go to a movie that night, and I couldn't. I had to stay, and I had to work. And so it was just an epiphany for her that the freedom of being able to choose when you work and what you do that comes with being self-employed was something that was valuable to her, and that she learned that lesson. But she still wants to help me out if I need help. So what kind of freedoms this has brought into my life? are the freedom to be home with my kids, which is my most important one. So I'm home with my 3 daughters. I have a 10-year-old girl, I have a 7-year-old girl, and I have a little girl who's about to turn 4. So my 2 oldest are in school during the day, but my youngest is at home. She does go to preschool a couple days a week for a few hours, but that's not really a break. Any of you that have had kids, it's like you take them, they're gone for a little bit. You end up with like 1 hour to yourself. So the ability to be able to earn an income and still be at home with my children every day and not have to send them to a daycare and to still be having lunch with my 3-year-old, to still be there to send my kids off to school and to be there when they come home and to have that flexibility to just work when my husband can be home with the kids is really, really valuable to me. So that's a freedom that I've been able to enjoy by working for myself. Another freedom that my husband gets to enjoy is that he is a firefighter and he loves his job. All firefighters love their jobs. I don't know if you guys know that. They also don't make a lot of money. They make a teacher's salary. And so the freedom that it grants him is that he's able to go and do the job that he really loves. And he doesn't have that pressure of being the sole provider and being forced to work in some other industry sitting in a desk all day, which would make him crazy. He would hate that. So he has this ability to be able to do what he really loves in life because I'm able to help contribute. Another freedom that I really love is the freedom to be able to help people. We have a sister, my husband's sister-in-law, my husband's sister, recently had a bunch of really scary health stuff happen with some of her little kids. And then her husband lost his job at the same time. And then they found out that the person that owned their house that they were renting was selling it. And so they were homeless, jobless, and they had kids in the hospital. And so for me, being able to be in a position where I could help and share my time to help them and be able to share my money to help them is a freedom that I wouldn't have if I hadn't chosen this path in life. And that's how I feel about it. And then I'm also able to create this freedom for my employees. So we are a virtual team. We do not have an office that everybody goes to every day. Everyone works from home. We have 7 people on our administrative team now. And so we just communicate via text if it's urgent. We communicate via email. We have video conferences, and then every once in a while we go out to lunch, all of us together. But we all work at home with our kids and work the hours when it's convenient. So some of my employees work at night. I hop online before I go to bed, and there's people working, 8 to midnight, and then other people get up really early. So that freedom and that flexibility is really valuable for my employees, which has made it possible for me to be able to attract a really talented group of people at a lower cost than it would cost me to recruit somebody with the same skills. For instance, we just hired a new recruiter, and she was the recruiter for Zupas before she had a baby. And she is amazing. She is on top of it. She is like the linchpin in our growth strategy. If we didn't have her, we wouldn't be able to expand at the rate that we're expanding right now. But we pay her almost half what she made at Zupas per hour. But it's valuable to her because she's still contributing. She's still earning an income for her family, and she's able to stay at home with her 10-month-old. And so that freedom and that flexibility that we're able to provide for our employees is also a really great benefit of entrepreneurism. So part of what makes this possible, all this freedom that I'm talking about, is technology. And none of this would be possible in this day and age without the technology that we have. So women business owners the percentage of women business owners has risen 74% in the last 18 years. And why do you guys think that's possible? I just said it. Anybody? Technology, exactly. And the internet. Moms at home with laptops. How many people know of a company that was started in a mom's living room? Raise your hand. Yeah, we probably all do. Great. Yeah, we have 2 of them in our own backyard off the top of my head. I know Stampin' Up! Started in a mom's living room. Steals.com started in a mom's living room. My company is also started in a mom's living room. So technology is how this is possible. It's how all of this movement of female entrepreneurs into the workplace, all these momtrepreneurs, as they're called, have been able to just take over the marketplace, growing at a rate way faster than anything else. So where is the first place that you guys go when you're making a purchase decision? Where do you go? You want to buy something? Where do you go? Your bank account? You're making a buying decision. Yeah, Google. So if you go to Google, if you're making a buying decision, you go to Google. You want to know, maybe you want to know reviews. You want to know more information on the specs of the product. You want to know the pricing. Any questions you have, everyone goes to the internet first. Actually, 81% of people go to the internet first when making a buying decision. So that means 81% of potential customers, for me or for any other business owner, are going to go to the internet first. That's really significant. That means our strategy needs to be based around the internet. And what's more is that 70% of the purchase decision is already made before a customer contacts that company. So before somebody calls, before somebody walks in the door, before somebody submits a little online form asking some questions, they've already made 70% of the purchase decision. So that means that a website should have the answers to whatever questions they have so that you can push that decision in the direction that you want them to make, which is to choose yourself, right? To choose your own company. So what does that mean? If everybody's making their purchase decisions online and everyone's going to the internet to find information first, what does that mean? Anybody? Exactly. You want to be found when someone has a question about your product or service, right? If I have a question and I'm like, I'm thinking about having a massage in for my employees. I wonder how much that costs. How much does corporate chair massage cost? Well, I would want to be the company that shows up first so that I'm answering that question. So I'm going to put them into my funnel on my website. And so for me, what this means that we need to embrace the world of the digital buyer, that this is just how people shop today. People don't buy things online, or people don't buy things the way they bought them 20 years ago. They buy differently today than they ever have in the history of the world. And so in order to be competitive in today's marketplace, we have to embrace that and strategize around our website and online content. So for me, we really focus a lot on search engine optimization so that our website is read by Google in a way that makes our results show up when people ask those questions. And then we also use inbound marketing methods, which means those are things like blogging, social media, creating videos so that we show up on YouTube when people have questions. And that has really been really effective for us. We've had, just in the last 11 months, we've had a 1,400% increase in organic traffic and a 2,300% increase in leads, which is just off the charts. So just in the last 11 months since we implemented inbound methodology, which is just writing about customer questions and addressing everything on our website from the customer's point of view, we have had an additional $330,000 in revenue just in the last 11 months from that strategy. So my second recommendation is just that whatever business you're in, whatever you decide to do, embracing technology and embracing the world of the digital buyer is it's essential. It's just what you have to do. So you just need to think from that standpoint. Think of the ways that you like to buy. Think of the things that you do. What do you type into Google? Do you type in questions? Do you say, how do I, probably not a car one, how do I fix a transmission, but like how do I change a tire? How much does this cost? I mean, any question we have, most of us type it out in question form, don't we? Type it into Google's like that. So you want to think like your potential buyer's thinking, which means like, what would you do in that situation? Put yourself in their shoes. So what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? I just want you guys to think about that. When you leave this planet, what are you leaving behind? And what is the legacy you want to create for your family, for your children, for your grandchildren? Because this is something I think about. So my legacy is that I am going to be setting an example for my 3 daughters. I didn't graduate from college. And to be able to show my children that a college degree doesn't guarantee success in life, I'm all for continuing education. I do plan on finishing my degree at some point when things slow down. And I support my kids, and I want my kids to go to college. It's very important to me and my husband to have them get an education. But I also want them to know an education doesn't guarantee success, and that they can be successful without completing a college degree. So I'm setting an example for my daughters that they can do anything that they want to in this life. Doesn't matter what you're born into. It doesn't matter what resources you have. You are capable of doing anything. So I want my daughters to feel empowered. I want them to feel on fire. I want them to feel strong and in control and know that they can do what they want to do. And so I'm setting that example for them. I'm also teaching my kids about debt and risk. So my company, we started with no capital. I built the website myself. I taught myself how to use WordPress, and it's pretty easy. In fact, the platforms are even easier to use now than ever before. So you can throw a website up really quickly. So I built the website myself. I did all the SEO myself. I taught myself how to market online. And we did it with no money. And so we've actually bootstrapped the company the entire way up. So we haven't ever taken funding. We don't have any investors, don't have any banks that we work with or anything like that. And for me, this is really important in my life because I don't want my daughters going into debt. That's part of the problem that my parents had with my whole childhood story. I don't want my kids to go into debt. I'm obviously a Dave Ramsey follower. I've already made that apparent. And I want my kids to understand that debt increases risk. Dave Ramsey actually tells a story about some books that he had printed. And they were educational books that he partnered with Chick-fil-A, and they put out these little books that were educational about saving and about spending, to teach kids about money. And in one of the books, he said something about space camp. And they didn't know that space camp was a real thing. So he's like, blah, 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 I want to go to space camp. In the book, like one of the kids was crying about, oh, you can't go to space camp. And the wife of the person who owns space camp in Huntsville, Alabama, called up Dave Ramsey because it was trademarked, like they couldn't use it, but he didn't know that. And so in his story, he talks about how if he had taken out the capital that he wanted to print a bazillion of these books, it would have been way more expensive when they realized they made that mistake. So he cash flowed the books that they had printed, and then when they had this mistake, they had to burn them all. They had to destroy them in an incinerator. And once they did that, they were only out the cost of 100,000 books instead of 100 million books, and how going into debt just magnifies that risk. All your mistakes, if you make them, are bigger and more expensive if you're in debt. And then part of the legacy that I'm creating too is opportunities for my employees. So all the things that are really important to me in my life, that flexibility, that freedom, that control, I've built my company so that I'm going to attract people that have those same values. And since we have a virtual team, we work with people on our team that value the freedom, they value the flexibility, they value the control. They also really like being a part of something that's growing, where they can really see their contribution doing something to contribute to the whole growth of the organization. And so my massage therapists all get to pick the shifts that they want to work. When a job comes in or a new account starts, we just say, hey, we have this opportunity, who wants it? So nobody's ever forced to go to work, like, oh, your shift is from 9 to 5 and you have to work that. And people really appreciate being able to just work the shifts that work for their life so they can be where they're needed. And then we also provide opportunities for advancement. So all of my administrative team, except for one person, is a massage therapist. So I like to look at our team of massage therapists and find what types of talents they have, capacities to learn new things. I like to educate our massage therapists. We give them training as they're moving into a new role. Like our operations girl is a massage therapist, our marketing director is a massage therapist, and they all started doing massage, and then we grow them into a new role. Because as I experienced in my own life, I'm very limited in how much physical massage I can do in a day, in a week, in a year. And so I realized that, and going into this, I want that same opportunity for my employees. So that's part of the legacy that I'm leaving, is this ability to create new futures for these people that we're bringing into our organization. So I didn't start here, obviously. Everyone has to start somewhere. So I want to tell you about my first job with Incorporate Massage. So I set up my little website, and I sent some brochures off with some of my friends, and I said, will you give this to your boss? will you see if they're interested in having, I didn't know if there was even a market demand for it yet. I was like, can we just see if someone will hire us? So I'm in Idaho. I'm sitting in the living room of my friend Cassie's house, and we're just hanging out, and I get a phone call from Salt Lake, and I pick it up. And it is a law firm here in Salt Lake. And I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Can you hold on for a second? Because there's kids running around everywhere. And I go and I lock myself up in the master bedroom at my friend Cassie's house, and I have the door locked, and I'm like hiding in the corner. Oh, yeah, this is Amelia. What can I do for you? And they're like, okay, well, we're going to need 3 massage therapists. We're going to need them for, 6 hours all day for Administrative Professionals Day. Can you do that? I said, oh, sure I can. There's a problem, though. I didn't have any employees yet. So I was like, yeah, we can totally do that. Definitely. What's the date? Okay, yeah, that sounds good. All right, great. I'll get that set up for you, and I'll send you a confirmation email. And I hang up the phone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like somebody's hiring us. What am I going to do? We don't have anybody to do the work. We had 4 weeks to get it put together, and so I was like, I can hire people in 4 weeks. I'm pretty confident with that. And so I started doing, I just posted some job ads, and I started doing some interviews and trying to find just massage therapists to work 1 day shift for 6 hours, But this is my brand, and it's mine, and it's a reflection of me, so I was very serious about it. I need to make sure that they're a good fit and that they're going to represent well. So I interviewed all these massage therapists for this 6-hour job, and I found 3 of them, which is what we needed. I found 3. And 2 of them I had to interview over the phone because I just had my kids, and I couldn't get to meet them face to face. So I hadn't met them in real life yet. And so we meet downtown at this big building, and we're in the lobby, and the office that we're going to is like up on like the 17th floor, and I'm like, meet me in the lobby, and I'll have you guys sign your paperwork. So they had to sign W-9s, so we could get all their paperwork so we could pay them. And they also, a friend of mine has an embroidery machine, and we threw a logo together and had her embroider it on the shirt so that we looked legit and we looked professional. And so I was like, here's a uniform shirt, there's the public bathroom, go change. We'll be upstairs in 15 minutes. And I just took them all upstairs. We just pretended like, yeah, we do this all the time. This is great. We did the event. I sat there like off to the side, kind of like just sitting in a chair watching them for like the first 2 hours. And then I was like, well, there's not really anything for me to do here. So then I left. And I remember calling my dad on the phone as I was driving home being like, oh my gosh, Dad, I totally just did this. And they paid me like $1,000. Can't believe it. So that was my first experience. So the lesson that I learned from that is that you just have to fake it till you make it. And that is like the mantra of my life. I just pretend like I know what I'm doing, and then eventually you do. Amy Cuddy is a social psychologist, and she says that you become what you practice being. So if you practice being a big, super awesome, amazing businesswoman, like I pretend all the time, then someday I really will be. So, and it actually gets easier. The more and more that you do things, the more you realize what you're capable of, and the more you become that. So, in closing, being an entrepreneur and working for myself has given me freedom. It's given me the freedom to control my life, freedom to be home with my children. It's given me the ability to be the architect of my life, to be able to choose the path that I want to go and be empowered. I'm able to improve the lives of all those around me, whether it's people in my family that I'm able to help, or whether it's people in my organization that I'm able to bolster up and educate and advance in their careers. And I'm able to create this amazing future, and I'm just so optimistic and happy and excited for where we're going. So I would love to take any questions if anyone has any questions. Yes, ma'am. My grandpa has money, and he paid for it, and I had to pay him back. So, yeah. Yeah, family loan, yes. They do loans for it now. You can get like a college loan just like you can for any school now, but back then they didn't do any kind of school loans, so I had to get a family loan. Is there a question over here? Yes. That's a good question. I actually skipped that part in my story. I worked, when I was 16, I worked at the YMCA in Kansas City, and that was really the only time I've ever worked for anybody else, other than the few months I worked for the spa before I stopped. I didn't always know I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I always knew that I wanted to be in control of my life. I might have a few control issues. I've always known that I want to be able to have the ability to make my own choices and to not be told what to do. My husband and I had an online store selling outdoor gear and camping equipment, and we did that for 5 years. And then when the market crashed in 2008, people just stopped buying outdoor gear. They weren't buying new tents and new coats. You know, people were just trying to keep their houses. So that company just like died, and we were left with all this debt as well. But it was a good experiment business. You know, I learned from that. I was like, I don't want to go into another business where we have all these startup costs and all this overhead, because we had to buy all the inventory first and hold on to it and then sell it. And so it was just really high overhead. And so with the massage company, when I started that, I said, I do not want to do something where we have overhead. I can't do something where we have upfront costs. And I want it to be just a lot lower risk. So, yeah. But no, I didn't always want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what that meant. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Were there any major fears or anxieties that you had to overcome?
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you about one anxiety that is really, really hard. It's called delegation. Especially because I have issues with control and I like to be in control of everything. Delegating stuff is super, super scary. So Callie is our operations director, and she was a massage therapist for us, and she also worked full-time for a disaster recovery place where they come in and fix your house, you know, when it floods or there's a fire. And she said to me one day, she's like, you know, if you need a little bit of help, I can do some of this stuff. I can help you with books or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. That's good to know. And then the day came and I was like, oh, I do need a little bit of help. And so I gave her like just a little bit of a job. I was like, could you just like help me just like organize this stuff and like put these finances in this kind of order? You know, I just had her doing like little office organization type stuff. And it was really, really scary for me. I remember the first time I gave her payroll, I was still doing payroll, my own separate one, just to make sure everything was exact and perfect and right. So she would do it all, and I had my own little redundancy where I would do it again and just double check every line item. But I've moved past that, and now like Callie operates everything, and she's fantastic. But that is very, very painful for me. There's a lot of anxiety with that. Fear of vulnerability, telling stories that are personal is really hard for me. That has been a journey I've taken this year. Is like learning about vulnerability and learning about shame and learning how to speak. And I work with a speaking coach who helps me like learn. He's like, dig deeper. You gotta dig deeper. So that was a fear of mine, because you know when you're vulnerable, you're like, well, what's gonna happen if they reject my story? You know, there's that flip side of vulnerability, which is shame, and so that was something I had to overcome. And then just believing that you're capable of it. I think a fear of, you know, not having what it takes to go all the way. So how I've dealt with that, though, is education. So, like, I read a bazillion books a year. I have a stack of, like, 15 books that I'm in the middle of all of them at the same time. So, you know, I'm reading about public speaking. I'm reading about scalability. I've got to read a fiction book in there, too. But I think education, being able to go to conferences, getting the practice of standing up in front of groups like this, you know, which I started with my own employees. We have a monthly meeting. The first time I got up to give, you know, a hello, welcome to our first monthly meeting, was really scary, because I'm in front of, you know, all the people who work for me, and I'm like, hi guys, I really want you guys to like what I have to say and to like working for me. But then, you know, I've done that every single month forever now, and now it's easy. It's easy to get in front of people. So getting past your fears is super challenging, but it's totally doable, especially if you have the right tools and you're educating yourself. You're going to seminars and conferences and reading books and watching TED Talks or whatever your version of education is. Any other questions? Yes, Miss Jenny. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I am like a mentor addict. Anytime I find somebody who's smarter than me in any kind of area, I just like beeline it to them, and I'm just like, I have a million questions. Tell me everything. And then eventually we build this relationship, and then I have like this really strong network of mentors that all have different expertise areas. So I first started with SCORE. SCORE is the service corps of retired executives. And they are a volunteer group of people who are executives that are now retired. So, you know, I'm Mr. CEO of this huge accounting firm, and now I'm retired and I don't have anything else to do, and I want to just help other businesses grow. So this is like the coolest resource ever. It is very under advertised. It's like the best kept secret, and they're funded through the SBA, and they're national. You can get mentors that are just virtual mentors. So if you're really, really specific, you're like, well, I'm just in manufacturing of this special type of widget. And you can find another mentor. Maybe they're off in like Maine somewhere, and you can just communicate via email and phone. So they don't even have to live here. You can reach out to anyone. If you go to score.org, they have just this huge database of mentors. So I have a group of 5 mentors that I work with. They used to all be in St. George, and now one of them's in Illinois, and one of them's up here. Some of them are in St. George, and they've just kind of scattered all over. So we have a board meeting every quarter, and one of them has a background in accounting, one of them has a background in marketing, one of them has a background in HR. Trying to think what the other ones are. But they all have like a specific area of expertise. And how valuable is that for me as a business person to be like, well, I don't know how to do any of this stuff, but these guys do, and they'll help me out, and it doesn't even cost me anything. So I use SCORE a lot. My advisory board, I actually just had our board meeting yesterday about a new opportunity that we're looking at, and the decision I was going to make is the total opposite of what they all recommended. So they steer me the right direction. I think that's a huge contributor to the success that I'm having right now. Yes, Jenny? Yes. Yes, so they are the advisory board. It was actually their idea. They were like, well, what do you think about having an advisory board? Would you be interested in having us just be an advisory board and we could just meet once a quarter? And I was like, yeah, I'd be interested. That sounds amazing. Because before I would just reach out to one and ask questions and reach out to the other. And so now we all communicate via email. You know, the 6 of us will send out an email and everyone sees it. And so we're having this just conversation between all 6 of us. And everyone stays up to date on what the other person is telling you. And then they can talk back and forth to each other. And in our board meeting, 2 of the business advisors were like, well, I think this. And the other one was like, well, I don't know, but what about this? And then they can kind of like hash it out. And then the group is like, oh, well, I think this would be the best decision. And so I think having that collaboration is really useful in an advisory board setting versus just like the one-on-one talking with one mentor, because you have that perspective of everyone else interacting with them. So, yeah, I was going to say something else about mentors. There's another opportunity. It's called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program, and I went through that in January. And it's paid for by Goldman Sachs, so it's free to you. They actually pay about $30,000 per student to go through the program. It takes 4 months. It is pretty much like all day Thursdays, every other Thursday, and then you have like a Tuesday night lab. So there's just a few requirements. You have to have $150,000 in annual revenue to get in, but don't let it stop you if you don't, because I got in on an exception because we didn't meet that when I was let in, and they will grant exceptions sometimes. So, and then your business has to be able to run without you there, so you have to have like at least 2 employees. And you have to have been in business for 2 years. Those are the 3 requirements, and then you can apply. But that was a really cool program because you're in a room with 30 other entrepreneurs, and they have totally different businesses and totally different industries, but you're all the same. And it's really interesting because you guys have like the same exact problems of like finding good people and keeping them, or like reading your financial projections and making decisions based on that, and managing risk. Like everyone has the exact same issues that they deal with no matter what industry that they're in. And so I got to be in this group of these I think there was 32 people in my class, all these other entrepreneurs. We had restaurant owners, we had like we had an industrial scale guy, I didn't even know what that was before. We had a security guy, real estate people. And just to be in that environment that's peer-to-peer, where you can work with each other and help each other solve problems, was just fantastic. So the program was also really awesome too. They would bring in teachers from Boston. Babson College is who makes the curriculum for it, and they're the entrepreneurial school, like the entrepreneurial school. And they would fly in their teachers and teach us these really cool classes. I learned a lot about finance. That was a spot I was really weak. But the really key takeaway for me from that program was just that group of people that now, I mean, we still talk and we help each other solve problems, and it's just an amazing resource. So, any other questions? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Goldman Sachs pays for it. So it costs about $30,000. Yep. Yep. So it's free to you. It's only in Salt Lake for 5 years, and I think they're about 2.5 years in. So the goal is for them to put 10,000 small businesses through it, and my class marked 4,000 nationwide. So they're almost halfway done. So it's a really awesome program, though. Okay. Anything else? I think we're over. Okay.